wonderful team that's in the district and up here. And as you can see, I'm with my communications director, Scott Weldon. My office is here for you. We are here to serve. We're not servants, we're here to serve. So we will absolutely be available for you. So I want you to also know where we are right now in terms of committee assignments and stuff like that. We have been assigned to the Appropriations Committee. We're the first freshman in Virginia history to be appointed to the Appropriations right off the bat. We worked it for about 4 or 5 months. We wanted to be as impactful as possible, as quickly as possible for our district. So I'm happy to tell you that we're on Appropriations Committee, which means we will have a say in full committee over the $1 trillion appropriations the federal government does. On subcommittee-wise, our subcommittee is military construction. That includes military construction anywhere in the world, whether it's temporary or permanent, everything from a bathroom to a base, and in between, and also over the VA, which we'll talk, I'm sure, about a little bit later on here in the town hall, where we oversee the budget of the VA as well too. We're also in the subcommittee of Homeland Security, which consists of all the agencies under Homeland Security's blanket, to include Homeland Security, TSA, Immigration, the Coast Guard for those coasties out there watching us. So that's the appropriations that we're on. Tonight I want to tell you just briefly about a couple pieces of legislation that we are working on. But first, before I do that, I want to tell you that one of the biggest things that we're in office for is because of veterans. And we visited the Hampton VA last Wednesday. And I know that there's been a lot of rhetoric about the VA, and rightfully so. There are a lot of issues and problems with the culture of the VA. I would certainly say that most people who work at the VA are genuinely good people, but I will tell you that in our experience, one of the directors who was overseeing a 1-star and then was basically just transferred to another one. That kind of stuff has to end. If you can't perform in your job, you shouldn't be there, because people's lives are at stake for sure. But what I will tell you is there's some structural problems with the VA. We saw that the VA itself is still on DOS system. I don't know if many of you out there might remember MS-DOS floppy disks and stuff like that. That's absolutely incredible, and unsat basically. So the VA also doesn't talk to the DoD. So the two largest healthcare providers in the world don't talk to each other. And everyone who's in the VA, 100% of them, were in the DoD before. That's unacceptable, and it's something that we're going to absolutely work to tackle. For those of you in my district, the 68% of people who are seen at the Hampton Clinic are actually from the South Side. So it's very imperative that we have some services here on the South Side as well too. And I will tell you, there's some things coming down the pipeline potentially in taking care of primary care on the South Side, and folks closer to where the veterans actually are. There's 2 small places, one in Virginia Beach, one in Chesapeake, that are overloaded, and we're working on trying to secure the funding to get one that actually deals with folks. We obviously want more choice in veterans healthcare as well too. We want to make sure that they have more choice in their healthcare, that they can see more private folks if they need to or they want to. Yet I still believe that the responsibility of taking care of veterans lies with the federal government. So we're going to be working on that. We're going to be working on sequestration, which is huge in our area. Of course, we have devastating budget cuts that basically became law when Congress wasn't able to get their act together, and that's exactly what happened. So we have indiscriminate cuts that really hurts military readiness, deployment schedules, maintenance, obviously, and a bunch of other issues as well too. So we're going to get a handle on that. I've heard a lot of great optimistic talk about that from my other members this year, but you can bet that I'll be an advocate up here for our district and for our national security apparatus for our country. So we'll be working on that. Cyber, just really quickly before I go right into questions, we're going to talk about cyber defense really quickly. We're working on legislation now, because I don't believe that our nation has a policy right now where we have defined what is an act of war, what is an act of aggression. You've seen sort of sporadic responses and isolated responses that really haven't got a full response, where 10 million folks' records were hacked. Many of you watching tonight, your records are gone as well too, as well as people are talking about election hacking and all those things. So we've got to have a uniform policy that deals with the threats of today and tomorrow, and that's certainly one of them. Trade was a big issue in the campaign issue this year, of course, all over. We're putting forth legislation that would require a report to Congress every 2 years, so a biennial report that talks about the benefits or the negative impact to an American economy of a multilateral trade deal. So not the bilateral trade deals, but the multi ones that have a lot of moving parts. I think it's prudent and important that Congress has oversight in that, and we actually don't just do a trade deal that just lasts forever. We have to look at it again to see if it's impactful in a bad way or a good way for our nation, and then act there. authorization of military of use of force. The executive, and let me say that, like, I know there are a lot of people out there right now tonight that are on the other side, the Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever you might be. I don't care. I'm happy you're here. I want to hear your voice. I want civil discourse. If you're just throwing names or whatever, that doesn't help you. But I want to engage with everyone. But I will tell you that no matter who the executive is, Democrat or Republican, Congress has to have oversight. And right now, this president and the president before were working on authorization of military force from 2001. And it's incredible. The world has changed significantly over these, especially with these two wars. So I think it's imperative that Congress that authorize, they shouldn't hide in the weeds, Democrat or Republican. You should be behind or not and have that argument to give the authorization of military force to the executive. It's our constitutional duty. A couple other ones that we're just working on right now. There have been many states out there who have legalized marijuana for recreational use or medical use, many states out there. So I think it's important that we look at, and I know in Virginia we've talked about it as well too, some sort of decriminalization of marijuana over 21 to a certain extent, so that for a couple reasons. One, there's tax revenue there, of course. There are people who are in jail whose records are marred, if you will, and quite frankly, I think that we are stopping them from reaching the potential in society, their own potential, and the benefit for society of their own potential for years to come. And I think that's wrong, and I think it's imperative that we look at that, especially when you have all these states that are legalizing it as well too. That's something we're going to look at. There is we're looking at a bill that talks about sort of an Uber in the skies. There are, I think it's 2,700 roughly. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's what it is. Private airplanes in Virginia alone, that if I wanted to fly from Norfolk to Roanoke, you could not pay Scott, if he had his insurance and his maintenance and everything was up to date, to take you to Roanoke. You could even split the cost with him because of a 1967 rule or legislation. So I think that if you want to pay Scott, who has the proper insurance and background check and all that stuff, just like the Uber compromise in Virginia, then you should be able to do that and fly straight to Roanoke, as opposed to paying the airlines $1,500 and flying around 3 states to get there. We're also, the LGBT community, I'm sure there's some of you out there watching tonight, and I want you to know that I do not support I think it's the First Amendment Act that's out there. I think it's discriminatory, and I won't support it. In fact, we're looking at legislation now that has protections in this discrimination for you. I think there are some blind spots there, and I'll like I said, I will stand up for people who may be vulnerable populations. So with that, why don't we go ahead and, Scott, what's the first question? I'm sorry to talk your ear off, but I want you to know what we got going on, and now I want to answer your questions. So.
Well, obviously, this has been a hot topic issue for the last few days. The number one issue we've gotten in our office since Friday, and what we've heard the most from today is, where do you stand on the executive order on the travel ban from 7 nations that President Trump has enacted?
So I think it's an excellent question. It's something on everybody's minds, of course. I think there are 2 parts to it. Number one, and I want to be very, very clear, and I sat in Virginia Beach, in a mosque in Virginia Beach, and said that I do not support a ban on Muslims. I think that's unconstitutional to be able to do that. And if I believe that text in that order said that, then I'd be the first one to stand up and oppose it, no matter who's in office. I don't care. I don't agree with it. So. But that being said, I've also, in that same mosque, I said that I support strengthening vetting for refugees. Now, I think that when you look at what happened and what transpired in the last presidency, when you literally had 20, 30, 40, and then you had like 16,000. This was Syrian refugees, which caused a lot of angst and anxiety in our population, and they wanted the last president to slow down. And because they couldn't vet. And I will tell you from personal experience, I've spent years in and out of the Middle East, in Yemen and Iraq and other countries as well too. So I know firsthand that some of these institutions there, they don't have the ability to be able to vet folks. Some folks, we were talking about earlier tonight in Yemen, I'm in the middle of the desert, some of these guys don't even know their birthday. I mean, there's some serious problems there. So I think it's important to take out the emotion in something like this. I know that the media and everything has sort of stirred this up, but I want to state unequivocally that I do not support a Muslim ban. But what I will tell you is, like many of us out there lock our doors at night. We don't lock our doors because we hate the people who are outside. We lock our doors because we love the people who are inside. And my job and my duty, the first duty, is to protect the U.S. citizens. And there may be some arguments there that say, hey, listen, well, the percentage of attacks or something like that, and using that argument. But if that was the case, I mean, the percentage of people who actually commit crimes, you wouldn't have